back, everybody. Alec of Remnant Performance.
And Booty of Performance Unleashed.
All right. In this video, we will be talking about everything oil related. So yes, we're going to talk about removing your oil pan. We're going to talk about your oil filter housing, how that works and how you get a 2.0T filter, and all the things that you need to do in order to install it. So, without further ado, Moody, take it away.
Okay, so here are the majority of the tools that you're going to need for removing your oil pan, installing the bulkhead fitting for your oil drain line, and putting back your oil pan, as well as installing the new oil filter housing for the oil cooler that will be provided in your Remnant kit. I'm going to go through every single thing so that you know exactly what you're looking at and where to look for it. This is the bulkhead fitting once again. It's got a nut and it's got 2 crush washers. The way this is going to work is your oil sump, once you've taken the pan off, is going to be drilled, and you're going to take this nut off as well as this washer. You're going to put this on top, so this is going to be sitting on top. Your sump is going to be right here, and it's going to be sandwiched with these nut and washer, like this. Okay? This needs to be tightened on, and I would recommend using some RTV on it as well to seal any irregular mating surfaces here so that you don't leak anything. You shouldn't leak because it's at the top of the sump and it's for a drain line. However, you can never be too safe when it comes to oil and fluids. The last thing you want is oil dripping down your pan.
And don't worry, as we talked about in the first video, Permatex RTV is actually included in the kit.
Yep.
Just like everything else.
Provided, once again with the kit, is a step bit. Now this bit gets wider as you drill more, and will tell you exactly where you need to go to stop so that it's at the right size for your bulkhead fitting. Typically, what you're going to do is you're going to bring it right around 16 or 14 millimeters. And you're going to test the fitting it on. And then if it doesn't fit, you're going to go up 1 size. If it doesn't fit again, you go up another size, and you keep doing that until it fits very snugly. You don't want it loose. You want it to be basically threaded in there. You want to like loosely thread it in, and it doesn't move. Okay? Once that's done, you're all set.
Yeah, so this is why you need an impact driver. So the impact drivers have these quick disconnect fittings. You can kind of see that right here on the end here. And that's kind of what you're going to have. You're actually going to have that also on the drill bit. And the reason an impact driver is so great is that it allows you to adjust the speed by just how hard you press the trigger. Right? So that's really going to allow you to have that control that you need while drilling through the sump. So that's why we recommend this as part of the kit.
One thing that you're going to notice is the sump is made out of aluminum, so this drill bit will eat right through it. Yeah. Which is why it's really important, as Alex said, to vary your speed. You're going to start slow, and you're going to figure out how much you need to drill and how fast you need to drill so that you don't over-drill. Once you've drilled past this, it's going to be very hard to get a larger bulkhead and then get a step-down adapter to use with your oil drain line, which is why you need to be careful with that.
Yeah. It's not hard. It's just, you just need to be careful.
Yep.
That's all.
Paying attention to it. After that, taking your oil pan off is very simple. You're going to use your impact driver with a 10 millimeter. Once again, you're going to be gentle with it. If you're scared to take things off with an impact driver, a 3/8 ratchet with a 10 millimeter socket works wonders. Yeah. You're going to crack all of the bolts loose after you've drained your oil. Right? Your oil drain plug is a 17 millimeter. I recommend using a 3/8 ratchet with a long 17 millimeter, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Yeah. Okay.
Now, you're going to be tempted, because the impact is awesome, to just go ahead and throw the 17 millimeter right on this 3/8, and we say don't do that.
You're gonna have oil spitting on your face faster than you can say blah. Yeah. so
don't do that.
Yeah, no, don't do that. So crack the 17 millimeter bolt loose and use an oil drain bucket that you can get at AutoZone, Vance Auto, whatever. Even a regular bucket's fine, but you're going to have to drain your oil before you do anything else. And the thing is, people are going to drain the oil and be like, oh, that's it, there's no oil, and there's nothing else. No, when you drop the pan, there's going to be residual oil and it's going to be leaking. So we recommend getting some shop rags or something that will sit under the pan until you wipe it down.
Yeah.
Another thing that works really well to clean off oil and to spray it down is brake clean. Once again, Advanced Auto, AutoZone. When you're using brake clean, pro tip, goggles and a face mask, because if you inhale that, it's very carcinogenic and it's very toxic, and it will find cuts on your hand or any part of your body. So if you have a cut, put some gloves on, cover your skin because it will burn. But it cleans up the oil very well. So once again, 17 millimeter for the drain bolt. Drain the oil into a pan and then take your oil pan off. Your oil pan is going to be 10 millimeter bolts all around. So crack them loose with the 3/8, crack them loose with the gun. Once you've taken all of them off, there is going to be an RTV seal between the pan and the sump. If we go under here, you'll be able to see that, and we'll show you that in a minute. What you're going to do is you're going to take your putty knife that's provided with your kit. You're going to get in from an angle from one of the corners, and you're going to tap it with the hammer into the RTV. It's not going to take much because it's going to crack under the pressure of the pan, of the weight of it. So you're going to go in a corner, tap it in, wiggle it out, and move it down. And we'll show you exactly how that works. And the pan will come out in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Once the pan's down, you're going to want to clean all of the RTV off from the pan and the sump. We're providing you with 2 plastic scrapers because the sump is aluminum. If we were providing you with metal ones, it will gouge the aluminum and you might leak. Right? Gouged aluminum does not hold up well even if you put RTV on it. You don't want to risk it. Plastic scrapers will never gouge the aluminum. They will dull before anything happens. 1 is more than enough, so we're providing you with 2 just to be safe. And in the unlikely event that these don't work anymore, this also works as a mild scraper.
Yeah.
Okay? So clean the pan, clean the sump, make sure the mating surfaces are flat and even, and then use brake clean to wipe everything down to make sure that there's nothing there to stop the RTV from sealing properly. Now, once you're done with the pan, right? Let's say you've drilled through, you've installed the bulkhead, and you've put the oil pan back on. You're going to remove the oil filter housing. You're not removing the filter, okay? The filter's coming out with the housing. You're not touching that anymore. You're removing the housing. The housing is held on by 4 10-millimeter bolts. A ratcheting wrench like this that you can get at a hardware store is perfect for this job. Once again, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay? Once you take the 4 bolts off, there's going to be some residual oil in the block. So once again, have some rags under the filter housing and drain it, take it out. There's going to be a little oil spill. So what? Once that's out, you're just going to replace it with the bolts that we've provided and with the oil filter housing that we have. The filter housing is also going to have a sandwich plate on it that allows you to run the oil temperature and pressure sensors, which we will show you how to install, and the sandwich plate, which we will show you how to install as well. And that allows you to run 2.0 turbo spin-on filter. These filters are fantastic for boost, and most of the 3.8 turbo guys that have been running other kits or any other type of boost have used these filters exclusively. They work better than the aftermarket, and both Remnant Performance will provide you one with the kit, and you'll be able to purchase one either from any dealership or from Performance Unleashed, because we will be stocking those. They're very cheap and they're very good quality. Other than that, I think we're ready to start showing you how to take things off.
All right.
Let's move on to that.
All right, so now that we're under the car, the first thing you're going to want to do is remove the splash guards that you have. Most 3.8s, especially the BK2s, are going to have 2 of them. There's one in the front over here that gets taken off when you remove the front bumper, but then there's the engine splash guard that covers all of this area. So it's just 10-millimeter bolts. Your impact is the perfect tool for this with a 10-millimeter socket, and you just zip, 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 keep the bolts in the splash guard, drop it, you're all set. Once you're there, like I said, 17-millimeter, crack your drain pan loose. Right? Drain pan bolt. Once you've drained all the oil from this bolt, put it back in. From there, you're going to have these 10-millimeter bolts that are holding the pan up all the way around. Once again, impact socket with a deep 10mm socket and extension so that you can fit everything here. Take everything off in a crisscross pattern, not a counterclockwise one or a clockwise, not next to each other. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And what that does is it alleviates the stress from the pan evenly. Sometimes the aluminum in these motors will stress crack, so you really don't want to put any excess stress on one side versus the other. It's not as, it's not as crucial for the oil pan, but you want to get into the habit of taking things off properly and putting them on again properly. So, let's assume that these bolts are all off, right? The pan is now held on with this RTV gasket. The best corner to attack this from is this one right here. So you're going to take the putty knife that we provide you with, you're going to wedge it in here, you're going to take your hammer, and you're just going to tap it in, okay? It's going to take a little while, especially because this is plastic, but this is so that you don't scratch the pan. So you're going to wedge it in, you're going to tap, 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 it's going to go in, and you're basically going to tap it in this way, and then tap it in this way. And hopefully, by the time you get to this bolt and this bolt, the pan will have enough leverage that you can just slide this all the way in and just keep prying on it, and it'll drop. Once again, when it drops, you're going to still have oil splashing around. So don't get terrified of it. Just, be
prepared.
Exactly. Be prepared. So, assuming the oil pan's off, this is the area that you're going to drill in the sump to get your bulkhead fitting on. If you see it right here, as you can tell, where my finger is, there's the bulkhead fitting. And this one's welded on. If you have a welder and you are that skilled, you really don't need to be watching these videos. But if you're not that skilled, like me, you're just going to get some RTV on the bulkhead after you've drilled a hole up, right? All the shavings are going to come down. You've drilled the hole up. You fit the bulkhead on. It's pretty snug. Take the bulkhead out. You're going to put RTV sealant, the black stuff that we're providing you with, around the bulkhead. Right here. Thank you. So, you're going to take this out. You're going to drop the nut, right? This nut. And you're going to take one gasket out. So this is going to sit on top of the sump. You're going to put some RTV sealant here. Drop it down. Put some RTV sealant under the sump as well. So you're going to seal it from both ends. And then you're going to tighten this nut. And you're going to need, I think it's a 24mm or 25mm socket to tighten this on. You're going to need 2 of them. So what I would recommend is using a ratchet with a large socket from the hardware store and getting a wrench to hold it.
Yeah. Kind of like this one.
And you can also use a channel.
You could also use channel locks. Yeah. But you're going to need to hold both sides so that you tighten it together from both sides. Because if you try tightening one side without holding the other, it's just going to spin. So you need to counter hold so that you can tighten it and nothing comes apart. From there, you're going to clean the surfaces like we showed you with those plastic scrapers and the putty knife. There's a ton of videos on YouTube of people doing this on different types of pans. And once again, you're going to be using brake clean to clean off any oil residue inside the sump, any metal shards, anything like that, to clean up this whole area. Once these surfaces are clean, right, the sump and the oil pan, you're going to apply the RTV on the pan. Not the sump, on the pan. This is very crucial, okay? You're gonna raise the oil pan evenly, and you're going to try and line it up so that the bolt holes line up perfectly, right? And you're going to put the bolts in by hand. Once again, crisscross pattern. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is to ensure that the gasket seals evenly all the way around. Because once you start tightening everything, it's going to squish out. And if you start tightening this side first and you work your way around, this is going to squish out way more than this, and you're going to end up leaking. If the oil pan shifts while you're trying to install it, it will smear. A little bit of that is okay. A lot of it will leak. So you're going to have to take it off, wipe down everything, put it on again, which is why you need to be very careful when you're putting this oil pan on. And the next most important thing is making sure that you have 12 to 24 hours before you put any oil in this, before you start the car, before you do anything to it. The RTV needs to seal. If it doesn't, you will leak a lot. Okay?
And you'll have to do the whole process again.
Yeah. Don't
do that.
Speaking from experience, it's miserable. Because now you just wasted 6 quarts of oil, right? You try to take it off, oil dumps inside, now you've got RTV on the oil, you've got oil in the RTV. Waste. Useless. Got to redo the whole thing, got to put new oil in. Next, after you've done this part, you're going to remove your oil filter housing. Alec, I think you can actually see me better from up top.
Yeah.
But if you want to come from the bottom, whichever side is easier for you. So the oil filter housing is very simple on the 3.8s. It's 4 10mm bolts. Having a ratcheting wrench, like I said before, works wonders. You're going to snake your arm around, and you're going to take off the OEM bolts with the wrench. Crack them loose, and then you're just going to take them out by hand. And like I said, there's 4 bolts. That's all it is, and this oil filter housing will come out.
And, you know, if you want to, you can actually remove it from up top here.
Yep.
By snaking your hand down here and doing that.
Yep. It's really not that hard to do.
No.
The thing you need to know is when you're tightening this on, you are not going to tighten it on with a lot of force.
Yeah.
You can strip the threads inside the head or the block itself, or you can snap the bolts inside. The bolts that we'll be providing you are very strong bolts. So the aluminum in the block will strip before the bolt breaks. So be very careful when you're tightening these to only put them in snug and then give it another tug. Well, the oil filter housing will drop and it will have a little bit of oil. So once again, be prepared for that. Right now, this is the oil filter housing that we will be providing. It's a very nice design, and it fits the same way as the OEM one does. You will have 2 gaskets in this oil filter housing. These gaskets are very crucial. They need to stick out like this. If they don't, you will not have a perfect seal and it will leak. But if you over tighten, you will crush them, and once again, it will leak. This whole video is about preventing leaks in your engine. It's very crucial because oil is the lifeline of the motor. These 2 washers will not fall out of the oil filter housing, but if you do not have them in there, you cannot install this yet, and you need to contact Remnant Performance to get new ones. As you can see, it's hard to pull them out, okay? Before you install the oil filter housing, get some oil, some old oil from your pin, and just run it around this. You don't want to have a dry mating surface. And when you take the old one out, wipe the block down and spray it down with brake clean so that you have a clean mating surface. The oil filter housing is this piece, okay? We're providing you with a sandwich plate and 2 adapter fittings. So, when you get the filter housing, this is how it's going to be. You're going to take your first fitting and you're going to spin it inside. It is crucial that you spin this here and you tighten it. So grabbing a pair of channel locks or the right size wrench, tighten this on. Not hand tight. You need to tighten it on so that it will not, back out. Once you have that in, you take your sandwich plate. I'm going to take these 2 sensor fittings off so that I can show you what happens. But you're going to take your sandwich plate, and one side is going to have a rubber O-ring, one side will not. The side with the rubber O-ring, once again, you're going to take some old oil, run it around so that you lubricate this so that it's not a dry seal. And you're going to fit it like so. And you're going to spin this fitting on from the female side. And this is actually going to be what sandwiches the sandwich plate to your filter housing. You're going to have to orient this a specific way so that if this is facing the block, this is facing out. You will be provided with 2 oil cooler fittings
and you will have 2 side holes for your oil temperature and oil pressure gauge. The AN fittings for your oil cooler do not need to be Teflon taped. Teflon tape is a type of tape that is a thread used for sealing pipes and things that have fluid going through them. Do not Teflon tape these. They have an O-ring here to seal, as you can see. These you tighten by hand, and then you take a socket or a pair of pliers and you tighten them on. You want them pretty snug. You don't want to kill them, okay? So these will go to your oil cooler, and they need to be facing the passenger side. From here, now you're going to install the 2 sensors for your gauges that you will be provided with these from Remnant Performance or Performance Unleashed. I'm mixing both of them up, man. So these ones you need to Teflon tape, okay? Both sides. To do that, the tape that we will provide you, you're going to spread it out, and it's going to take a little bit of finesse, but you're going to spread the tape out like this, and you're going to hold it on the thread and run it relatively tightly around it. You want to make sure of 2 things: that the Teflon tape doesn't spin and that it's on properly, so that when you're tightening it, it gets pulled, which means you need to be putting the Teflon tape on clockwise from the hole. The second important thing is that the Teflon tape cannot be covering the hole like this. If that gets into your fluid, it will clog things. So make sure that you run your finger on it. You're going to give it about 2 or 3 full revolutions, and we've provided you with a full roll. This will be more than enough, and you will never go through this for the turbo kit. So, Teflon tape is put on in a clockwise fashion, not covering the hole at all. Everything's tight, hunky-dory. You're going to install it. You're going to be very gentle with it, because once you install this, if you take it out, the Teflon tape is damaged. So you have to take it all off and reinstall it and reapply the Teflon tape. So you're going to put this on like this.
And yes, put your sensor in first.
Yep, put the sensor in first, because if you don't put the sensor on right now, it's going to be a nightmare getting it onto this fitting. So you're going to tighten the sensor on. This oil pressure sensor, if you come closer over here, there's some red sealant on it that comes with the sensor. That acts as the Teflon tape. If you take it off, if you take the sensor off right now, if you uninstall it, you're going to have to either reapply the sealant, which you will have to buy at AutoZone, it's just red Loctite, or use Teflon tape. So install the sensors onto the 90-degree fitting, and then the 90-degree fitting onto your sandwich plate. So this is tight right now, and that's it. This is fine. Not going to leak, it's not going to go anywhere, and it has to be oriented up so that the wiring for the gauges goes up into the frame rail, into the sound tube hole. So once again, facing the block this way, the sensor's facing up, the oil temperature sensor is also facing that direction, and on the passenger side are the 2 fittings that you have tightened with a pair of pliers to the sandwich plate.
So now let's go ahead and actually show you what sensors are coming with your gauge kit and where you're going to install them.
Yes.
All right. Now that we have our oil pan back on, we've got our old oil filter housing out. This is time now for the Remnant Performance oil filter housing, right? So you have here, as Moody talked about earlier, this is the oil filter housing. This is where your turbo's oil feed line will go. Okay, right there. Don't mess with this one here. That's not on all of them. This is just on the first run. We had that one there. It's this one that you want to use.
So on the side.
On the side. These right here, obviously, as Moody talked about, you have new gaskets here for those. That's what you're going to put in those, and we'll show you how to do that right now. And you have right here an M24 to an M20, which is their standard bit here when you're going to your oil filter. M24 to M20 adapter. So go ahead, screw that in. Once you get it hand tight, go ahead and take your channel, adjust it, get it there, and give it nice good tightening. Once it's nice and tight, you're ready to move on to the next step. Now, let's go ahead and get our gaskets in. As Moody said, you don't want to put dry rubber on dry metal. That's never going to make a good seal. So, take some of your old oil, just a little dab, and just run it along the seal. What you want to do is run it along the seal that goes into the oil filter housing. Okay, that's one. That's the large one. Here is the small one. You don't need much, just a smidge. There's the oil filter housing. Okay, that's in. Now, we're going to do the same thing when we go to actually mate it to the block, but we're not there yet. So, get yourself a little bit of a rag or something to wipe your hands off. Keep yourself nice and clean. Next. So, Moody did this on purpose. He installed the this right here, your oil pressure sender, in the wrong side on purpose to show you guys what happens when you put the Teflon tape in there. You can see how the Teflon tape went right into the grooves, and you see how it's gone now. That's why, as Moody was saying, once you put it in, you got to get this stuff out. You gotta obviously re-Teflon their fittings. So obviously want to make sure you do it right the first time. So what it is, as Moody said, you're going to have it like this. This is the way it kind of fits on the block. The block is here. This is facing towards the passenger side. You want this to mate up here. That's how it works. It goes straight out, right? And on this side, you're going to have your oil, this one here for your oil pressure sender. And on the other side, you're going to have your oil temperature sensor. And you'll see why. The oil temperature sensor is really long and it needs to go directly into this housing. You see it right there. So that's what we're going to do next. And you can see right here, this oil temperature sensor here, this probe, as you can see, it's very long. You can see that it's going to go all the way basically right in there. So what we need to do is obviously Teflon it, because you can see there's nothing on it. And as Moody said, what you want to do, seems counterintuitive at first, but you want to take your Teflon, spread it out, and then you want to go on clockwise.
It will take a lot of practice,
Yeah.
which is why we gave you a full roll of Teflon tape, not just the little strand.
Don't worry if you're making a few mistakes.
Exactly. It's okay to do it a couple of times, get used to it, and put it on. It doesn't have to be an exact science, but remember what I said before. You want to do it a couple of times around so that there's a thick amount of Teflon, and you want to make sure that it covers the threads and nothing else.
Yeah. What I like to do is actually just run my fingers around it. Gives it a nice close hug there to the threads. A little bit on, too much on, but it's not going to be a big deal. So now you start hand threading it in.
So just for reference, the temperature sensor goes to the left of both of these cooler lines.
Yeah.
And remember, this gasket faces upwards
Yep.
into the oil filter. And just like the other two gaskets, you have to lube this up with some old oil. You don't need much, but you just want to make sure that it's not a dry seal.
Yeah.
So now you can see the temperature sensor probe is just sticking inside the oil filter housing.
Yeah.
That's
Now we're gonna
exactly
go-
what it's designed for.
Yep. And we're going to want to go ahead and take our channels, Or you can take a regular wrench and you can go ahead and start tightening this bad boy down.
One thing you got to note is that you don't have to kill these ones on, but they do have to be tight so they don't back out and so that they seal properly. The Teflon tape is what's doing most of the sealing. So that's good. Perfect.
More than enough. Perfect. And you can see, you're not going to be able to, don't worry about butting up against it. There's still going to be a nice little gap there. All right. So now that we have the temperature probe in, let's make sure we get the other side ready to go. So here is the oil pressure sender. This one's I already put it into the fitting. These are just like the fittings that you guys are going to get. So
Alec, can you tell me why we're putting it on a 90-degree fitting really quick?
yes. So actually, what happens if you go underneath the engine right there, you'll see that where this fits up, there's actually I think it's actually the
oil pan, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's the oil pan dipstick. The
Yep.
dipstick comes in right next to this. So if you don't have a 90-degree fitting on here, you're not going to have the space because it's going to run right up into the dipstick.
Yep.
With the 90-degree fitting, you're going to have about 5 or 6 millimeters of space clearance before you get to the dipstick. So you want to put it in, and you want it to be like up at an angle.
It's like a 45-degree angle facing
45-degree angle facing
the passenger side. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, good call. So now we've got the Teflon off. Let's go ahead and put on some new stuff. So yeah, do the same process. Basically just come out here and you stretch it out a little bit. Make sure it's nice and flat as best you can get it. And feel free to cut off some.
Yeah, a pair of scissors here wouldn't hurt. Or your teeth, whichever one you prefer. Alex
I'm an
using
animal,
this.
so.
Yeah, he uses it like floss, you know.
Yeah, get all up in there.
Basically.
So let's see here. Let's go this way here. And as Moody said, try to avoid at all costs going onto the front of the thread. You do not want to be on the front of that fitting because it will clog stuff up. All right. Oh man, this actually is a little loose.
Yep. So, remember what we said before about the sensor having this red stuff? This is red Loctite. And if you take it off, from the first time, it actually wears off. So it's the same thing as the Teflon tape. So what you have to do is peel this red Loctite off. All right? Clean up these threads, because otherwise they won't seal. And then put Teflon tape or red Loctite from AutoZone back on.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. So what we actually have here is one of the new pressure sending units, and here's the old one that we took off. You can see the difference. See that red? And versus this one, it's all chewed up, it's old. Right, so we'll skip the process of taking off the whole thread there. Again, you guys won't have to do that because this will be the first time you put it on. So just go ahead and screw it in. This is nice because, again, you don't have to Teflon this one up.
And Alec, why are you putting the sensor on to the 90-degree fitting before putting it on the...
So what happens is if you were to try and put the 90-degree fitting in there, and you have, you have to try and now get around this oil sandwich plate. It just becomes a little bit more difficult to do it. If you do it this way and go ahead and put it in right now, you won't have any fitment issues, and it just makes it easy because then you can actually use this as a little wrench and just kind of tightening it. So
good old torque and mechanical leverage right there.
Let's go ahead and get a little bit of pressure on this bad boy. Again, don't have to be crazy tight. Just want to get it nice and snug. If you want to save your fingers, again, you can use a regular wrench here on this side and you can tighten it down. But this should be more than enough. You can see that you're getting. If you get really close to the top of the red, you're going to be just fine. Plenty in there. All right. So now, since it's already Teflon, we did that already. Let's go ahead and put it into the sandwich plate.
Remember, people, righty tighty, lefty loosey.
Yeah, indeed. Don't be like me. All right.
Which one's right?
Yeah. So again, nice and tight. Get it all the way up and forward. That's a little bit. There we go. Nice. Forward.
So you want it facing the passenger side with the oil cooler lines facing up.
Yeah.
Like a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So that's good. Should be nice. Ready to go here.
Yeah.
Just make sure test fitment. Everything is going. I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to get it any closer because it's right up against the sandwich plate. You know you've got it right.
You have like maybe a millimeter of space.
Maybe a millimeter. But you have plenty here. The way we designed the oil filter housing is made it nice and thin. So that's why we actually include with the kit these replacement bolts. These are also 10 millimeter, so that's great. So you don't have to change your bit there on your wrench or whatever you're using to take them off or put them back on. Still 10 millimeter, just like the old ones. They are reduced length. I believe the original is 75 millimeters. These are 60. So again, you need to use these. Do not reuse the OEM ones. Nope. This is part of the kit. Again, you need to use these ones.
Yep. There's no weight reduction here, kids.
Yeah, definitely not. All right, so we are ready now to connect the sandwich plate to the oil filter housing. So as Moody said earlier, you want to go ahead, make sure, get any dust or anything like that off of here. You want to make sure you have a nice clean mating surface. Then go ahead, dip your finger in some old oil that you got laying around. You don't need a lot. You just kind of dab it on there.
It's so shiny.
So shiny. I know, to all you folks at home, you're like, man, this thing is so beautiful. I'm dirtying it up. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, man, this is a beautiful piece. I didn't even want to put it on my car.
Yeah, it's kind of an ornament right there.
Yeah. So again, you want the hole there that's going to be used there for your oil feed line to your turbo to be facing this way towards the same as the lines are going to go to your oil cooler. This line right here actually feeds into this hole. And this hole right here is actually pulling from your oil filter. And it's pulling from your oil filter after the oil has gone through your oil cooler. So that means that coming through here, it goes into the block, and which is also feeding your turbo, is giving you both cooled and cleaned oil into your turbo. That's what you want to help regulate the temperature of the turbo kit. Right? So you take this adapter. Once you have it in there, go ahead, find the threads, thread it on, do it hand tight, and then you're going to want to get either a channel like you've got here, or get one of those crescent wrenches, and that will be able to give you the leverage you need to get this nice and tight. Again, you're going for beast mode city on this thing. All right. See here. You're going to have to play with it a little bit. You're going to have some spinning action until it starts getting tight, and then it won't move. All right, good. That's nice and tight. Good.
Slippage is normal. Don't be afraid of slipping.
Don't be afraid.
Just
keep your face away.
Exactly.
So now this is ready. Almost ready, 100%, to mate up to the block. Yep. So these right here, this is actually stainless steel as well too. So you'll take your 2.0 T's, intake filter that you have here for the oil filter that comes in the kit, and simple. Again, before you do it, lube that up as well too, but I'm just showing you for instruction purposes. This is what the assembly looks like. Boom.
Oh my God, that's an oil change.
That's it. So all you need to do for an oil change, like that, after you've obviously drained the pan. So super simple.
Pro tip for oil changes, right? You don't have to tighten that on to Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
The best way to do it, once it's lubricated, is spin it on until it's tight, hand tight, and then give it maybe a quarter turn.
Yeah.
You know, give it a tug. If it doesn't come loose by hand, you're good.
Yep.
It will not come loose. That's what the gasket and seal is for. And that way, you can spin it off by hand when you're ready.
Yeah.
So if you tighten it with the wrench, you will not be able to remove it without a wrench.
Yeah.
It gets tighter as it heats up and cools off.
So, last bit. Take some more of that oil. Lubricate that ring. Nice and good. And come back over here. And we'll do the final assembly. There you go. Perfect. Now, last thing we need to do before we put it on the block, lube up the front of this one here. We have a little bit of oil on our finger, so I will go ahead and lube that up a little bit. Might get a little bit more. Think we good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and put it on the block. Take our 4 new bolts.
All shiny bolts. Everything's shiny in this kit.
Nice and shiny. And actually, I should be able to drop it down from here. That is really nice. Here.
Once again, this is where having someone to help you is very beneficial here.
Yeah.
So Alec, do you recommend putting the bolts in the filter before dropping it in here, or do you recommend just dropping it in from the top and then coming in from the bottom and bolting it up?
I recommend it's kind of a personal preference. I think obviously you want to get the sandwich plate on. I recommend that you probably keep the filter off.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do it. All right, now we've got our old filter housing in place. You want to take your bolts. You have to kind of move it around. Oh, there's the hole. Once you feel it, kind of finagle it around a little bit.
I'm going to come in from the bottom. Look at that. Kind of a tight squeeze to get to the oil filter housing.
Yeah.
But once you know where it comes out, and once you've taken it off, it's really not that bad.
No.
And the oil filter is supposed to sit at a 45-degree angle like that, just like so. Barely see it from either end. There it is.
Alright, now that's kind of hand tightened. It's time to go ahead and actually install it.
Crank it down.
Alright, just made a whoopsie. And this is exactly, it's cool though, because it allows us to show you guys that even if you make a small mistake, it's not the end of the world. We actually needed to put this in before we put the oil filter housing in, because then it just makes it easy. But it's not the end of the world like we just said. So what Moody's going to do right now is he's actually going to thread this in to that same spot we talked about, where this is the oil feed line is going to come into this one. This again is provided with you for you in the kit.
Yep, and you want to make sure that this is facing up. So here's your oil filter housing, for example, and here's the block. This is going to thread in like that.
Yeah. Either that, or even it can go to the side too, because there'll be enough room.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you don't want it facing down.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and take a look.
Might be a little bit tight, but
Might be a bit tight, but we should be okay.
so for this one, probably use both hands. You're not going to be able to see much. It's going to be in the way of the dipstick tube, unfortunately, but whatever. Just barely makes it.
Barely.
Barely. So if you forgot to do this one like us, it will go in.
Barely.
Barely.
And you'll have to do some more finagling with the wrench to try and get it on 100%.
Yep. Although right now, that's almost where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Just by using my fingers.
Awesome.
So if you have some good finger strength, confident in your abilities, should be okay.
Indeed. Yeah, I'd recommend you face it out.
Yep. So
That we have.
wrench.
Alright, so yeah, we actually took a 17 millimeter
Yep.
wrench here to just kind of angle it back out some more. Should be pretty tight.
That's really good.
Yeah, that'll work really well.
And that's going.
And so you can either have it to that angle, you can have it going forward a little bit towards the front of the car, or you can have it going towards the passenger side. It doesn't really matter that much. You just want it to be nice and tight.
Yep.
When you see the actual oil feed line going out like that, actually makes it pretty easy to go ahead and tighten it. So, it should be good. But again, if you can avoid this, make sure you install it before you put your oil filter housing in.
Yep.
All right.
Follow me.
And that is, ladies and gentlemen, everything to do with oil.